and welcome to Season 2, Episode 9 of the podcast. You may not agree with us,
But
I'm Maris Lowry.
And I'm Eric Thomas.
And we're here for week number 9, Eric, and it's hard to believe of the high school football season, and it's just flying by, and before long, the snow will be flying, and that might be sooner than later.
Yeah, man, the temperature's really dropping. I mean, Friday night when we were at the game, once that sun goes down, it's what everybody says. It's football weather, good climate to play some sports.
All right, we're going to talk about high school football. That's how we always start off our podcast, the Raleigh County Report, and that's brought to you by Window World of Beckley. It's not too late to start making plans for home improvement in windows at Window World. Check them out at windowworld.com. And Eric will start in Class 4A, the game you and I had last Friday. What a great game it was between Beckley and Princeton. And the first half, especially that last minute and 10 seconds, it was like a 4th of July parade with all the fireworks of both teams putting up points. But in the end, it's Princeton that comes out with a big win, 62-41.
Yeah, I mean, they lit up the scoreboard in those first two quarters, and I think the last minute and 10 of the game really decided the game for Beckley. Beckley had a chance to go in at halftime with at least a 1-point lead, wound up throwing the interception, and then the wheels kind of fell off the bus after that. They got a couple of scores, but it was never really close after that.
And what really turned the tide, as you mentioned right there, Beckley had got behind, but they blocked an extra point. They're down 27-21. They get a big kickoff return by Gage Burdett. They put the ball in the end zone. They take the lead, and now there's 14 seconds left in the half, and they kick off, and they squib it, and they get the onside kick. They've got all the momentum, everything going for them, and then the final play. And I agree for Beckley to throw the ball, but when you throw the ball, your quarterback's got to know you got to throw the ball as far as you can, or there's nothing wrong with throwing the ball away.
And the play before the pick six was really the right play call. They ran a go to AJ Thomas, didn't connect it, and I think once they saw that, sometimes it's easy for me to second guess, but you never throw the ball to the middle of the field.
Never.
Especially when you have your fastest guy on offense running to go. And when Monster got his hand on the ball, he knows what to do with it. Scoring 6 touchdowns on the night. I mean, he put on a show.
And none bigger than that one right as the halftime buzzer expired. As he's running down the sideline, there's no time left on the clock. He takes it to the house. Princeton gets the extra point. They have all the momentum. And then they get the opening kickoff to start the second half, and they score. It was like double trouble. Beckley never could recover from that.
And we had talked about that in our pregame before the game, and I said Beckley needed to win that last 5 minutes of the second quarter and the first 5 minutes of the third, and they didn't do it.
No.
And then they got doubled up, and then they don't have the type of offense, the Flying Eagles, to really battle back from a 2-3 score deficit.
Yeah, I think if you're Beckley, you don't want to get in any kind of shootout with anybody. They're more of a ground and pound. They have the ability to put up points and throw the ball, but they don't want to get in that kind of track meet.
Yeah, you have to get some in-between stops. And let's see, though, they've always been a bounce-back team after a loss this year, and there's none bigger than the game you'll probably preview here in a second, going on the road.
Right, and also what it done for Princeton, it elevated Princeton from number 2 in AAA. Now the new number 1 team in Class AAA is now the Princeton Tigers.
And that's big if they can hold on to that ranking, because when you bump Bridgeport down to 2, you put them in the bracket with whoever's the number 3 team.
Right.
And those two teams, which could be Fairmont,
could be
Bridgeport,
or Herbert Hoover, like that, right.
Someone like that. But those two teams, you take out one less team that you have to battle to get to the promised land.
Right, and now we will talk about Beckley against Spring Valley. And, of course, one thing I'm not sure about the overall health of the Beckley quarterback. He was injured. That was Gage Price. He was taken off in an ambulance. I haven't heard anything. Do you have anything that you might be able to add to that?
Well, the thing I hear is that he's fine, but you never know medically if he's cleared to play. And that will change the dynamic of that team.
Sure.
Because you have to move pieces around, and you'll have to move your top running back to quarterback. And that you really need your starter back here down the stretch.
So Beckley with that loss is 4-3, but Beckley is number 8 in Class 4A. Will be on the road against Spring Valley, who's number 8 in Class AAA, and Spring Valley came off of a 28-6 win against Capital.
And that's a big win. Capital the previous week had come to Oak Hill and throttled 4A Oak Hill, which is a future Beckley opponent. So this Spring Valley team, Beckley never plays well down there, and it's just going to be one. But just as they did at Parkersburg South, you got to learn to win. This is a grit game for Beckley. They need to go on the road and play some gritty football.
Well, I think when you look at the 3 games that's in front of Beckley, Spring Valley, as we talked about, is their next opponent. Then they come home Halloween night against Oak Hill and then finish up at George Washington. I think they have to win all 3 of them to get a home game.
Yeah, definitely. And you know what? And they can't with a fully healthy team. I mean, you just take it one game at a time, but none bigger than Friday night
Right.
to get it rolling.
And the reason I say that, Eric, because they're number 8 now. And I think if they were to lose any one of the 3 games, they would probably fall back and one would not get a home game.
Yeah, I mean, we could say that, but you just don't know who
Right,
behind
that's
them
true.
may lose. So just them hovering there. I mean, but you want to get, if you get 3 wins, you might bump up to, you want to stay out of that one bracket.
Well, if you get 3 wins, you might bump 8 to 4. They could go 3. I'm with you. I don't know how all that. I know the point system, but I don't worry about it until it's all said and done.
Yes, yeah, but it's still something for them to look at week in and week out.
All right, now we take a look in Class AAA, and of course, this is a game that Video Productions will have this week. Eric, you won't be with me, but Bill O'Brien will join me. It'll be Berkeley Springs against Shady. Now, when this game was first put together, Berkeley Springs was AAA. Now they're down to AA. Berkeley Springs is 2-5. Shady coming off a 39-13 loss against Winfield. They are 2-6. It'll be the first time ever that these 2 teams have played.
Well, and that's a long trip for
4
Berkeley
hours,
Springs
yeah.
to come down to play Shady, but a much needed opponent. Maybe Shady can rally and get them a win. They had a big win 2 weeks ago at Liberty, and maybe they'll match up and be able to get a Friday night victory.
You know, as I start to dive in to do my homework at Berkeley Springs, and Bill O'Brien and I were talking on the phone today, as long as Bill and I have been in broadcasting, neither one of us have really thought much, or really, we've never done a Berkeley Springs game, never even really thought about it. And Eric, you've been around a long time too. I don't ever remember Berkeley Springs in the basketball tournament,
No.
baseball, football. I never really remember much history of an athletic team at Berkeley Springs.
Yeah, you're exactly right. But you know what? You and Bill get to call the Battle of the Springs.
That's right. Well, it's spring against Springs because it's Shady Spring without the S.
Right.
And Berkeley Springs. Of course, you know from the state track meet, the broadcasters, or not broadcasters, but maybe the PA announcer kept calling Shady Springs
Shady Springs.
with an S, but it's spring against Springs. So we'll see which one springs it.
Yeah.
All right, now how about a clash of titans? The number 1 team in Class AAA, Princeton, will host the number 1 team in Class AA, Independence. It's 7-0 and 7-0 in Mercer County, and that, if not the biggest game in the area, maybe the biggest game in the state of West Virginia this week.
Yeah, it's going to be big. 2 heavyweight titans, man, and you know, Independence can do it a very variety of ways, as can Princeton. Princeton lives through the air, but you can't unload the box against Princeton because they have backs that can hit a seam and take it to the house. As on the flip side, the Independence Patriots, they really like to run to set up the pass. So I'm anxious to see what battle of wills, who comes out on top in that one.
You know, Eric, I think a lot of these teams, these 2 teams, kind of really favor one another in this aspect. They both can be big play teams, and they both have had their problems with a lot of penalties.
Yeah,
And
goodness, yes.
And I did some research at Princeton, and that wasn't an anomaly of Beckley game. I understand Princeton's had a bunch of penalties in all their games, and you and I have done enough Independence games over the years that of all the good things that Independence has done, one of the things that have hurt them have been penalties.
Well, we left the Princeton-Beckley game saying the same thing that we leave the Independence games saying. They have enough talent to overcome that in certain games, but
not this one.
Not in this one. You can't have touchdowns called back. You can't get yourself behind the chains because the dictation of the defense will dictate what you're going to do. Because if you're 3rd and 12, third and 15, they're bringing the house. You better be able to get rid of the ball, and it's going to be. I'm anxious to see who can harness that penalty. The penalties and play pretty clean Friday night.
Yeah, Princeton won the game last year that you and I broadcast, but Princeton didn't pull away until late in the second half.
No, and they did not. And there was an electric game. A lot of fireworks in that first quarter, and it ended up being like 7-3 or something like that. And then Princeton, like as you said, after halftime, really put the pedal to the metal.
Yeah, you got 2 nice quarterbacks, big time quarterbacks, in Barker for Independence and in Green for Independence, Barker for Princeton.
Yes.
And then you got the 2 big play guys, Nelson for Independence and Mosser for Princeton.
Yeah, but Mosser, I'll give the edge, and Nelson is a great player, but Mosser can hit you with so many different ways,
Right.
as he did the other night. He had 6 touchdowns. He had 4 passes, 1 on ground, and an interception. And in the kicking game, if you kick it to him, that I'm anxious to see. And Independence does it with Cuthbert. They both have good kicking games. So this is going to be a clash of the Titans.
Yeah, I would suggest if you're playing Princeton, kick the ball out of bounds and
Hey,
giving the ball to 35 is better than letting him run like 85 for a touchdown.
That is a great suggestion there.
All right, and then last but certainly not least, after a bye week, the Liberty Raiders will be on the road. They're 2-5. They'll take on the number 7 Midland Trail team in Class AA over at Hyco. Midland Trail 6-1.
Yeah, and that Midland Trail team came up big with a victory over James Monroe, and they're putting themselves on the map. And if you look at that, the seeding of that, they could end up playing Independence. The way they're seated right now, and I think they scrimmaged one another.
They did.
So
correct.
And that really reminds me of years past when Independence first scrimmaged Bluefield, and then they end up playing one another in the playoffs.
Right. Before we move on, we have to do what?
You like, share, and subscribe at Warden Broadcast Network on YouTube, and you can find us on Facebook.
And I'm Face in Eric's book. All right, now, we talked about these 4 games and like we think that Independence and Princeton may be the biggest in the state. But here's another one in 4A, a Battle of the Eastern Panhandle, a rematch of last year's Class 4A championship game. Spring Mills is 4-3, and they'll take on Martinsburg 6-2.
Yeah, and Martinsburg, and we know their 2 losses came out of state.
Well,
one out of state,
and then Huntington.
and one to
6 in a
Huntington.
row.
So they've really righted the ship. And Spring Mills, they don't like to say. I think this is kind of a rivalry game since they met. They played in the regular season last year and in the state championship game. So I'm anxious to see how that one pans out.
Yeah, both of these are in the top 8. A ton of points here. The winner of this game more than likely is going to be guaranteed at least 2 home games.
At least
in the
2
playoffs.
home games, and Martinsburg probably desperately wants to to have that home field.
Big game at Fairleigh. Bluefield 6-2 are number 3 in AA, taking on AAA highly ranked Greenbrier East, who's 5-2.
Yeah, and Bluefield's kind of caught their groove. They lost a key player in that matchup with Independence, but it seems like Coach Simon really gets those guys. We talk about this. By the end of the season, they are playing their best football.
And last but certainly not least, Herbert Hoover, after they lost that first game to Independence, they've won 6 straight, highly ranked against the defending champion in Frankfort, and Frankfort is 7-0. So that's a big battle in AAA Frankfort number 2.
Yeah, and that's one of those that Independence people will be at Princeton, but also watching that contest because that sharp eye on that. A lot of points can be had for Independence. Even in the loss, if they were to lose to Princeton, they still can probably maintain the number 1 spot if Herbert Hoover was able to knock Frankfort off.
All right, that'll do it for the Raleigh County Report. High school football. We'll switch to college football. And college football, this segment is brought to you by Pasquale's Italian Restaurant. Pasquale's has all your favorite Italian dishes. Plus, they have sandwiches, salads, seafood. They have catering, and they provide parties are available. And if you want to book your next event, you can dial them up at 304-255-5253. All right, we'll talk college football. We will talk West Virginia Marshall, but we won't get into that just yet. Right now, I think maybe I don't know if you want to say a surprise, because Indiana was good last year. I think nobody just knew if they would be able to live off of last year's success. But with that big win in Oregon, they moved themselves to number 2, and they'll be home against UCLA, who oddly have been on a winning streak since they fired their coach.
Yeah, and UCLA, they fired their coach, and they said, we're going to turn to a program that's going to get some coaches fired. But Frank Cignetti is really, he's locked in. He just signed a $1 million, $100 million contract
for 8 years.
For 8 years. So, and you're right about this Indiana team. Haven't watched them against Oregon, and Oregon's the real deal. So, but Indiana is too this year. I think their defense is way better than last year, and they have a better running game and a better quarterback. So, as good as they were last year, I think they're better this year.
I think so. The one thing that both Indiana and Ohio State have thrown a collision course, they both have to play Penn State. Now, I know Penn State since they've really fallen apart, but Indiana has to go to Penn State, and Penn State next week will come to Columbus to take on Ohio State. But I still think Penn State's got a good enough roster that in one game, they could get it together and they could upset either one.
And what's wild, Penn State lost their coach and their quarterback. In the same week. So it usually takes, probably a week, 2 weeks to get your other quarterback, what package or what plays he runs the best or whatever. But that guy's not on a Penn State roster for being a boob. So,
right.
So I think they'll be trying to knock off, get a feather in the cap, knocking off one or both of those teams.
And if Ohio State and Indiana should run the table, they would meet in the Big Ten championship in Indianapolis. And of course, what they would probably more than likely, the winner, if should that happen, Eric, the winner of that would probably be the overall #1 seed in the playoffs.
Yeah, and you know what's wild about that game? If it came down to them in the Big Ten championship, that would be a home game for Indiana, basically.
Yeah, right there in
Well, I mean, I know
Indianapolis,
Ohio State, it's real close, but
Bloomington's right down the road.
Bloomington's right
Yes.
down the road, so
Yes.
that would be must-watch TV for me.
And, I think this is an elimination game with Oklahoma losing to Texas a couple weeks ago and Ole Miss losing to Georgia in a shootout last week between the hedges. Ole Miss is at Oklahoma. They've each got a loss. They've each got a conference loss. And I think the loser of this, will be on the out.
And I think, Oklahoma's quarterback coming back, he didn't look really that healthy coming back early, but they knew that they needed him down the stretch. I think I don't think they have a good defense, but Ole Miss, I think they can put points up on Oklahoma, and I look for them to pull it out.
Well, the game's at Norman, so I'm going to give a slight edge to Oklahoma because it's a home game.
Yeah, well, I'm
I know. That's why we were just like with BYU and Utah, which we'll get into that.
That's right.
Which I like BYU, and you like Utah. And BYU ended up winning 3. And I went with them only because the game was at BYU, and I'm only going with Oklahoma because the game is at Oklahoma.
And home field advantage is really big in the college world, but sometimes, man, I think some teams have enough moxie to go on the road, based on their coaches or whatever. And in that Utah game, Utah had it well in hand, 14-10 late in the game, and just end up giving up some big plays.
Well, having moxie to go on the road, will Texas A&M have the moxie? They went on the road at Notre Dame and won that. They've got a night game at LSU, and LSU's probably done after their loss to Vanderbilt. But Texas A&M still undefeated. Texas A&M shooting for a chance to play in the Southeastern Conference Championship, and perhaps they think they can be maybe the #1 overall seed.
And I'm anxious to see how that one plays out. And you would love to say LSU just because of Death Valley. It's tough to play a night game in LSU and Baton Rouge. So I don't know. That's a coin toss to me.
Where dreams go to die, right?
Yeah. Where dreams go to die.
That's what they say in LSU. Also, one of the big games, and maybe the winner of this game would have the upper hand on that group. I don't know what they call it now, group of 4, whatever it is. It is South Florida and Memphis are playing this weekend at the Liberty Bowl in Memphis, and Memphis was upset this past weekend. So they definitely, if Memphis loses, they're definitely out.
Yeah, because they just had them circled in, getting in, and South Florida has some athletes and battle tested with that schedule that they've had, and this one may go to the home team coming off a bad loss, maybe refocus and get back on the winning ways.
In Alabama, if that big win at home against Tennessee, they'll go on the road against South Carolina. I think South Carolina more of the disappointing teams.
Yeah.
There was high expectations for this South Carolina team, and I know the quarterback got hurt, but they've since kind of fallen off. And I think you're talking about the moxie. I think Alabama can go on the road.
Yeah, and I think the quarterback is playing.
Simpson.
Simpson is playing really, really well. The defense is starting to figure it out, and that's when the tide rolls. All those good teams that they had, they were dominant under Nick Saban playing defense when they were winning.
And we got to mention the game Saturday night in the rain, Notre Dame beating Southern Cal, which as of now will be the last game in this series. Hopefully they get it fixed and they play. Southern Cal wants to play on a neutral site. Notre Dame doesn't want that. They want to play early in the season before they get into conference play. Notre Dame doesn't want that. Yeah. Notre Dame's trying to keep somewhat of the tradition. I realize that nothing is like the way it used to be. Right. But there are certain things that both teams in this case have the power to keep things, have they been for 96 games.
Yeah, you just got to take the bureaucracy out of it. Everybody, they need that game. It's good for both programs. And, your Notre Dame, your Fighting Irish still rolling, man. But I think they have a 1-2 punch. As good as Love is, the backup.
Jerry Price.
Did he take a kickoff back?
Yes, that was the difference in the main. That's what flips the game.
Special teams flip the game. So I think, and whoever, they're starting to play defense again. Notre Dame started out
not very good
at defense, and they're starting to right that ship.
All right, now we'll talk about the 2 home universities. That's WU and Marshall. I guess we'll start with the Mountaineers. And I was listening on the way over here, Eric, to Rich Rodriguez's press conference today, and he said, the Central Florida game in Orlando is just a tape they just throw away. There's really nothing good he said came out of it. I thought maybe since we talked about it on the podcast last week that it was a winnable game, but I felt that maybe Central Florida would win. The line was 7.5, but I didn't expect 45-13.
Yeah, I mean, if you look, it was 14-7. WV had driven down, got a turnover actually, driven down, missed a field goal that could have been. It's one of those where you never know how things would go had you made
Kind
that
of went
field
south
goal.
after that.
And then they came out third quarter, bombed, scored real quick, and then it just snowballed. And I'm gonna say what Rich says. They're just not good in any phase of football right now.
But the thing about it, just like we talked about, everybody is a lot better at home than they are on the road. And West Virginia is capable of winning any of the remaining games, the ones that are at home. And you'll be at the one this weekend. They
Yeah.
have TCU. TCU is a good team, and TCU needs this win to kind of get themselves in position.
Yeah.
It ought to be a battle.
And TC's one of the ones I had in the upper echelon of the Big 12, and then they just seem
They
like
dipped a little
it
bit.
seems like they played to the level of the opponent.
Yeah, after they
Yeah.
lost that tough game with Arizona State,
Yeah, and
they
they
haven't
kind
been
of
the
took,
same.
and they it was a Friday night game.
Yes.
I think we had gone. It was week 3. We come
Yeah.
back from our long football trip.
At Scott.
Yeah, at Scott. So that's how long that trip was, because that game was
Yeah.
in Arizona, and I caught the end of it.
Right.
So, but TCU, and you're right. That and the numbers bear it on with the line. I think it's 15 and a half. That's just because of home home field advantage. But I just hope the fans come. I'm still, I'm a true fan. I just don't give up on the team. It's early in his tenure coming back, and I think Rich Rod will get it straightened out.
And for Marshall, how about winning their second double overtime game in spectacular fashion, the way they won on Saturday?
It was so exciting. We all ended up watching it, and they came back. They faced a real good quarterback for that Texas State.
Yeah.
And I think he had 600 total yards himself, close to it. Threw for 4 and probably rushed for 100. But it was a real good game. But defensively, I think Marshall's starting to figure it out.
And I think we got to give a shout out to a player at Marshall that you and I
yeah.
both know, Braden Ward, of the way he's played and the way he's really helped Marshall.
He actually had the key play in the fourth quarter to turn the game around. In the third quarter, like a strip sack, came around the edge, stripped the ball, sacked the quarterback, and recovered it. I mean, I think that was one of those that helped them stay in the contest.
And for us, since we both know him so well, and obviously you work with his dad and known his dad, and you guys went to the same high school, even though it was not at the same time.
Right.
But the closeness that you have with their family, and how I've got to know him, and how I knew his mom's family from the boxing days,
Yeah.
the Davenports from way back
Definitely
in the day,
has some
and how I've
athleticism.
known Braden since he was young. I mean, it's just amazing that you had him right here in your house where you and I are at
Yeah.
now. He had been here, now to see him out there, and not just out there, but out there making plays for Marshall.
And the thing with him, he was not. Let's just face it. In high school, he wasn't the player that he's rounding out to be. And now he's getting some good coaching, and he's learning some moves, some technique, and it's showing on the field.
Well, Marshall's off this Saturday. Their next game will be against Coastal Carolina. That's an ESPN game on Thursday, October the 30th. So that's Marshall's next game.
Yeah, and the much needed break after that emotional win, and maybe they can down the stretch. They still got a chance to play. Everything's right in front of them for the conference championship.
And I don't think Coastal is the team this year that they've been in the past.
They're not, but anytime like we keep
you
talking
go on the
about
road,
it, you go on
right,
the road. But
stuff.
I still think that's a winnable game, and Marshall should win that one.
All right, that takes care of the college. So, Eric, we need to do what?
Like, share, and subscribe at Warden Broadcast Network on YouTube, and find us on Facebook.
I'm Face, Eric's book. And now that brings us to the National Football League. And this is being brought to you by Modley's Plumbing and Heating. And it's getting cold, so I don't know about the plumbing, but you might need the heating from Modley's. And you can dial them up at 304-253-HELP. And Eric, our barking dog, really didn't have much bark, bite, scratch, didn't have much of anything. I think it wound up under the porch as we both had the New York Jets. So, Eric, you're still 5-2, and I'm 4-3. But, folks, I'll tell you, if you think it's easy, you have to find an underdog that can cover and can win outright. And I tell you, it's not easy. But like I said, Eric, you're 5-2, and I'm 4-3. And we'll get into that in a minute. But first of all, let's touch on some of the big games this weekend. Shout out to your Dallas Cowboys. They win a rivalry game. They beat Washington, and Dallas offense at home. We talked about home and away. At home, look how good their offense is, averaging 40 points a game at home, but on the road, not quite 20. And it's just amazing when you take them out of their stadium. As good as they are offensively, they can't be that every week.
I mean, think about it. Add 20 points.
Right. They're 20 points difference.
20-point difference.
Yeah.
And the thing I like about this offense, it's evolving, but it all starts up front. That line is solidified, and the future is bright for that line, because they haven't played with their core starters since opening night against Philly. So that shows you the depth that they've built. They backup center, a backup guard the last 2 weeks, and they've played really well on the backup tackle. But the guy that's leading them, and I don't think he gets enough credit. You know, I talk about him a lot. Dak Prescott.
Yeah, he's playing great.
Is playing at a championship level. Not that they're a championship team. They're not, because that defense is woeful.
Right.
But that guy, he's winning games.
And, you know, we got to give a shout out to the Denver Broncos. Denver was down 19-0. They were down 26-8. They scored 33 points in the fourth quarter and came back on the last play of the game to kick a field goal to beat the New York Football Giants.
And that was we had a chance to finish that one, and it was exciting, man. But both of those teams, the Giants are turning it around. Might not show in the win-loss column, but they're going to be a tough out the rest of the year with Scatterbo and their
Dart, the quarterback.
Dart.
And, you know, Eric, I think through the first 7 weeks now of the NFL, I think the biggest story are the injuries. Almost every team has got key players that are banged up. And once again, the 49ers, you look, San Francisco able to win that Sunday night game, and they've got 2 Hall of Fame
guys
defensive
out.
Players that are out
Yes.
in Warner and in Bosa. And not just out, they're out for the remainder of the season.
Yeah, and if you look at Detroit in the Monday night contest, all 4 of their defensive back starters did not play. They had 2 practice squad guys on there, but the thing is, in the Washington team, not gonna feel sorry for them because I don't like Washington.
Well, the quarterback,
but the quarterback gets banged up now, and that could cost him a loss next week, and you don't know when he's going to come back. And the thing is, with the hamstring, he likes to get out and run, and that kind of, if you're not as mobile, you can get injured even more.
Well, we'll talk about that. Washington goes to Kansas City, and if Washington was at full strength on the road at Arrowhead, it would be hard to beat them.
Yeah.
If you don't have Daniels, it makes it really hard to beat them. But we'll talk about that as we look at some of the key games next week. San Francisco on the road against Houston. Houston coming off a Monday night loss against Seattle. San Francisco will win over Atlanta. Like I said, San Francisco, I don't know how they do it with all the injuries they had. They're 5-2 as they go on the road. Houston's a slight favorite, about 1.5 point favorite here.
Yeah, and you might be giving something away here.
Well, 49ers could be a barking dog.
It could be one. But the Houston defense, I think, is solid. Their offensive line and the quarterback I don't know if he's regressed. He just doesn't have a lot of weapons.
And you're talking about Stroud. He doesn't appear to be as good as he once was. And maybe that's regression. Maybe because his team has changed.
I think maybe his team changing a lot of moving parts. I still didn't understand how you can trade your best lineman.
Yeah.
I didn't get that.
Yeah, so we'll see how that plays out. And of course, we kind of gave you a little preview talking about how Dallas played so well in their win against Washington, how Denver rallied. They play in the Mile High City. Dallas and Denver hooks up in the late game Sunday
Dallas
afternoon.
never. I can't remember Dallas winning there, and I'm a huge Cowboy fan. Cannot remember him winning in Denver.
No, I don't recall. Of course, they beat him back in the Super Bowl back in the 70s.
77. Yeah,
back
I know
in
that
back
one.
in New Orleans.
Yeah, but that was neutral
yeah,
site.
that was way back when Roger Staubach was playing.
Yeah, I have
that?
to look that one up. But about them playing at Mile High out in Denver, I don't think they.
And
got
I don't know
many
if,
wins.
of course, Eric, at that time was January of '78. You was just.
Oh yeah, no, I remember.
I know
I
he
have
was
a
like
T-shirt from
what 7 or 8 years old.
Yes.
If you recall, Denver's starting quarterback was the former Cowboy quarterback Craig Morton.
Craig Morton.
Yeah.
Yes,
so,
and that's why we went and whipped that tail.
all right. Now another battle Sunday night. The Green Bay Packers take on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Aaron Rodgers against his old team.
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron Rodgers is playing good football. What let them down in their loss, the Steelers' loss, was they couldn't stop.
Defense.
They could not stop them.
Couldn't stop
I mean,
Cincinnati,
go ahead
no.
get a go ahead touchdown on the Thursday night, and Rodgers thinks his night is done, and they couldn't put out the fire. So, but this was, this one's been circled for Rodgers, as he said with the Jets.
That's for everybody in
that room.
Right. And then on Monday night, it'll be the battle between Washington at Kansas City. And right now, I think the Chiefs might be the second best team. I think Indianapolis right now, I think you have to give them the top team. And I know nobody hands out Super Bowl trophies
That's right.
midway, but they've got the best record in the NFL at 6-1.
Yeah.
And should have beat the Rams, should be undefeated. But the Chiefs have really looked good these last 2 weeks.
Well, the 3 best teams still with my eyes, and you said 2 of them, and I think the other one is Detroit. I think those are the 3 top teams right now.
And I think Tampa's right there with Detroit, even though
even
Detroit
with their
won that
injuries,
game.
yes,
Right.
Tampa's right there. Tampa had their full slate of guys. It would be a knockout dragout.
And of course, what's amazing in the Kansas City Raider game on Sunday, the Raiders not only did they not cross midfield, they never got the midfield. That's hard to believe in an NFL game. NFL team can't even get the midfield.
So you brought this to, it might have been Mario. We got to give him his credit.
Yeah.
He was giving us stats because he's a stats guy.
Yeah.
But at one point in the game, Kansas City was up 21-0. And the Raiders hadn't even ran 20 plays.
Yeah, they had 18 plays, and the Chiefs had 21 points. Yeah, so, and the two things when you look at the Raiders, whether it's his fault or not, Geno Smith is tied with Tua from Miami for the
Yeah.
most interceptions in the league. Geno Smith's got 8 touchdowns, 10 picks. Tua's got 10 touchdowns, I beg your pardon, 11 touchdowns and 10 interceptions.
Yeah, and they do a lot of throwing it to the other team, and you can't win that way, especially when there's little margin for error for both of those teams. I think some of it's on the quarterback, a lot of it's on the line, but who gets the stat is the quarterback.
Yeah, and that's a rivalry game from the old AFL days between the Chiefs and the Raiders. As a matter of fact, that's an answer to the trivia question. That was the final AFL game played in 1969 before the merger of 1970 when the Chiefs beat the Raiders, and that's been a battle. And the Chiefs really could have scored a lot more. They took Mahomes out, put Minshew in, and yeah. So I mean, even for a rivalry game, Andy Reid, I think he's a class guy. People might say they don't like the Chiefs, but I never hear anybody say they don't like Andy Reid.
Yeah, and I have to tell our viewers, if you're still watching this, my partner said the funniest thing ever. He said they took out Patty Mahomes so they could give the punter some work.
Yeah. All right, now that brings us to one of our favorite, if not the favorite part of the show, our barking dog. And Eric, where's your dog when we need it?
He likes to run around and get his face in it, but when we really, he's like one of those dogs. If a burglar really came in here, he wouldn't do anything.
He took out. All right. Well, I think he's hearing. We're summoning him, and let's see if we can get Tuck over here for a little bark, maybe a growl. He's trying to come into the picture. No, he's camera shy. All right, so do you want me to go first or you want to go first?
Well, I'm going to go first because people need to know we don't discuss this. It came down to 2 of the games that you picked as our top games, and they need to know we didn't discuss it.
No, we didn't.
So I was leaning San Fran. San Fran's a 1.5 point dog at Houston.
Yes.
And I just think they'll win. So I'm going to give a bonus one. But I'm going to go with San Fran, but the other one I was leaning to was Green Bay coming into Pittsburgh, the Steel City, and get one. But I'm going to go with the San Francisco one.
All right, well, I'm going to take the Steelers. They're a 3.5 point favorite. 3.5 point dog at home. And I'm with you. I think Aaron Rodgers has circled this game. And I think the Steelers are not going to lose this game. Not only do they cover the 3.5, I think the Steelers win this game straight out.
Wow, and I think San Fran does too. And 1.5, I didn't go out too much on a limb, but sometimes there are games they just give you, and I'm going to be 6-2 come next week.
All right, that will wrap it up here for season 2, episode 9. And what do we got to do, Eric?
You got to like, share, and subscribe with Warden Broadcast Network on YouTube, and find us on Facebook, please.
And I'm Face, Eric's book. And until next week. This has been the podcast. You may not agree with us,
but
I'm Maris Lowery.
And I'm Eric Thomas.
Have a great week, everybody.